Hey everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Rabun,
And I'm Tiff Salcido.
and joining us today is a very special person to both of us, Miss Michele Tevis. She is professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation and holds a BA in business management. After 30 years of leading at Apple, she now partners with executives to navigate change, build resilient teams, and create cultures where people thrive, and mentors coaches as they grow in their practice. Some of two of the coaches that she mentored in their practice are sitting here right here with you. So we are very, very happy that Michele has decided to join us today. So good morning, Michele.
Good morning, Carl and Tiffany. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been thinking about, different people that we could um, have on the show, and just because, we've been doing this for a little over a year now, and we've been talking about so many different topics that have to do with coaching and leading and working in government work and human service work, and so it's great to have people that come in and either echo or offer a different perspective on what it is to actually do the work that we're talking about that we've done as well. So really, really, it was a perfect opportunity for you to be here, and we're so glad that you're able to do that. So yeah.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and some background, as I mentioned, Michele was our mentors in our coaching certification program that Tiffany and I both went through, and when we got to choose our preferences for coaching, I asked Tiff. I said, "Hey, who was your coach?" And she goes, "Oh, pick Michele. Pick Michele. She's the bomb. She's the bomb. You'll love her." And I said, "Okay." Yeah, I know Tiff said the bomb because I know Tiff uses the bomb. Yes, I'm pretty sure. Yes. So yeah, so I went ahead, chose it, and yeah, she was really, really helpful, and I definitely I appreciate all your help with that, Michele, and we had a good conversation. So how about you, Tiff?
I loved her. I went through the program when I had I bit off more than I can chew. So I was a tornado like that whole period. And what I appreciated about Michelle is that she's very intuitive and you can just tell her like short and sweet, like just give it to me direct. And she's like, done. And so we were very efficient in our coaching together because she really honored like where I was coming from. I think I took one meeting from a car. I think I was like, we gotta take this real quick. I'm in the parking lot. Let's do this thing. And I heard she was always honest, very direct, and super helpful, and I always appreciated that. And so thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. So when Carl was like, "Who did you choose?" I'm like, "You want Michelle." I promise. I don't. Not this is not to say anything about any of the other mentor coaches that we could choose from.
Absolutely.
I just know I had a great experience, and so I shared that with Carl, and I'm glad that he listened to me. He should listen to me every now and then.
Well, thank you
Well,
both for
it's
those compliments and those words. Out of all the coaching, I think I enjoy the mentoring piece the most because it feels like I'm giving back to the coaching community. I really believe in it, and I believe in the work that coaches can do to help people. And so, if there's anything that I can share with the coaches that are entering in this space, I'm very honored to do that. So I enjoy it a lot.
so tell us, dude, about your journey. I mean, we read your bio, but how'd you, I know you worked at Apple, and just what was your journey towards coaching? What got you to really want to dedicate, a career and a business to coaching others and mentoring others?
But, I think so. I spent 30 years at Apple, and as I was exiting out, I got a lot of feedback from some of the folks who had worked for me and other folks who didn't work for me around who's going to be my coach, who's going to be my mentor, who am I going to go to for things? And I went, hmm. And it was something that I just kind of naturally did. Also, it was kind of part of the work at Apple too, that you coach your teams, right, through the grow model for them. So help them work on their individual development plans and kind of coach them through the process. Um, However, though, coaching was not at that time, really perceived as a good thing, you know, as I've been in it for 10 years and 30 years at Apple. Whenever someone got a coach, the perception was, oh, that's a performance related thing, they're getting help. And even Apple used coaching in the call centers, but kind of used it in a negative kind of way. So if the agents' CSAT scores were not where they needed to be, or they didn't handle a customer call correctly, there was coaching that would come in, but it wasn't really like growth coaching. It was more, you didn't do something right. And so I left there taking all that into account, thinking, yeah, I really need to find my next chapter and what that is. And went off and pursued thinking, all right, well, I don't want to just hang my shingle up as a coach. I want to go through some program and I want to go through some kind of certification as a coach. And I want something that has some kind of street cred with it, right? So that's why I looked at UC Davis for their program, because I felt Davis brought the weight of the university name with it. And then the certification with the international coaching certification brought that piece of cred because they are one of the global governing bodies in this coaching space. There's a European one and ICF. And so I went out there and just started researching and pursuing it and got a coach myself during that time. And very interesting. I didn't hire her because her rate was crazy, but she did give me a couple hours of her time, which was lovely. And she said, you know, I think you need to give yourself some grace and some space in between leaving Apple and really figuring out how to be because you're coming out of a corporate environment, you're coming out of an environment where you uh, needed to deliver results, you needed to hold people accountable, you needed to have resiliency and all these things, which are all great things to have, but that's not really what you need to have as a coach. You need to learn how to be. And can you be? And do you know how to be? I'm like, I was all upset and angry I was really kind of butthurt. Like, what do you mean I can't be a great coach? Be a great coach. But it didn't stop me. I just kind of put it in the back of my head and went on and did my research, submitted my application, and got in the Davis program. Well, sure enough, as you both know, coming out of that program, you learn more about yourself. You not only learn the mechanics of coaching and you learn the competencies and you learn the coaching conversation, but you actually learn yourself about yourself. And her comments of learning to be were very true because you needed to know how to be a coach. So my journey coming out of that was, right away got my PCC and did all of that, but I did pro bono work because I wanted to continue to learn that evolution of being because I realized that I live in an area with a house that has an amazing view of the West, and I had never sat in the backyard and had a cup of coffee or had a glass of wine or really watched the sunset or the sunrise or listen to the birds. I would catch a glimpse of it if I got home early enough from work and I'd go, oh, look at that beautiful sunset. And I'd run out there and snap a picture and, come back in and start my next shift of work. And I had never really just enjoyed the beauty and the gift of what I had and where I was. And so I went on that journey of learning that. So my first, year and a half of coaching was just really kind of me perfecting my skills, doing pro bono work with a nonprofit for women in transition that they came in, they got 6 hours of coaching. They paid $25 for that service, and that service paid it forward for another woman to come in through the program. Met some amazing women, and that's what kick-started it and got me going.
I love that so much. I have to kind of echo the process, right? Because even in, like you say, you're learning how to coach. Like when I came in, I was literally overwhelmed, like so much. And um I went in with the assumption that we were just going to go to our classes a couple days a week and that was it. And I'm like, I can commit to that. And then all of a sudden it was like, and you also have to coach so many hours a week and practice and get with a partner and record your sessions and and I was like, where am I going to find time for all of this? And
Yeah.
so um there was a moment that in that, and it was really kind of life shifting for me. We did I woke up one day and I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast before, Carl, or not, but um, I I'm high performing and I'm like always go, 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 go. Relaxing is not something that I've ever really been great at. And we had to do, I came in one day and it was a Saturday. I remember because I was so physically, emotionally, like everything just drained. I had nothing. And I remember coming in and would work with people. And I told my group, don't anticipate much out of me today because I am spent. Like I'm here in body, but I'm here. That's all you can get from me today. And they were all very sweet, like no problem. Well, that day happened to be wellness. And then they walked us through this guided meditation and we had to close our eyes and imagine ourselves in 20 years. And I remember like a couple of minutes into this guided meditation, I started to cry. And this is like at 10 in the morning. And I could not stop crying for the rest of the day, like for the rest of the day. So I remember coming downstairs at the end of that class at 4 o'clock, and my husband is like, what is wrong? What is wrong with you? Because I'm going, because I've been sobbing like all day long. And he's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm just tired. And we did this meditation and I could see myself in 20 years. And she was so calm and so together. And I don't feel like I'm any of those things right now. And he's like, it's going to be fine. And so then we're like, let's watch a movie. And I ended up falling asleep on the couch at 4 p.m., slept the rest of the day. So wake up the next morning, like,
Hmm.
done, good, ready to go. And he's like, are you done with your whatever that was yesterday? And I said, oh, yeah, no, it's just my spring meltdown. The good news is I only do this like once a year. And he's like, no, you do this like every 3 months. And I was like, really? Like, no self awareness around how much was burning myself out.
Hmm.
And so I made a decision that day to try to be more of the person I saw in 20 years. Like, how do I do justice to her? How do I get her there? Because I am not doing well right now. And that being, and I've scaled back so much. I moved to another country. Yesterday morning I woke up and sat on the beach for a few hours and just watched the waves and played with my dog, and like those are things I would have never made time for before
Hmm.
that coaching program. But it really did, I think it puts us in a space of when you are really going to be of service to others, you have to be well.
Hmm.
And I can't sit there and try to help people like listen and be present and help them process their life if I'm not willing to do the same. And so for me, it changed the trajectory. And I don't even do tons of coaching. I do some, but I will definitely say the biggest gift that I got from that program is being able to kind of scale down and realize like I don't always have to be achieving. Sometimes I can just exist, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
So
it
I
def
appreciate the program for that.
yeah, I echo that. I mean, it really, I mean, just I try to be on a journey of self-discovery as much as I can, and everything that I do. Sometimes I'm more successful than others, but just with the coaching program, the one thing that it just always echoes in my mind is Lori Kozart just saying, it's not about you. It's not about you, right? When you're meeting with somebody, it's not about you because it's so easy for our own thoughts and everything to take over. And I recognized, I'd been coaching for 10 years before I got in the program, and I realized, that. there was a nuance that I had been missing, right? And I even mentioned this in the class. I said, I realize even with your best interest and you're trying to help people get to a destination, it's very easy to sway them towards the destination you think they should be at, as opposed to where they want to go. And so just even you can, without even asking direct questions, you can ask open-ended coaching questions that push people towards where you think they should be, as opposed to where where they're ready to be and where they might want to go that might be different than your thought process. And so it really, I mean, just even on that level, right? I've always wanted to help people, and every job I've been in has been in a helping profession, but really recognizing the best way that I can help people sometimes is to let them really guide the process, right? And I can offer questions and give advice, but that's a different thing, right? The difference between coaching and mentoring, right? And so just having that thought of, okay, well, gosh, if they just did this, in my head, but it's like, but it doesn't sound like that's important to them, and they sound like they want to go this way. So how do I help them explore that, right? And so it's such a huge piece. I always thought I was such an altruistic, giving person, and I realized, if we're not careful, our selfish and personal parts of us, will take over, and that was the biggest lesson that I learned. So it was definitely important.
Hmm. You learn a lot and you continue to learn, right? Even after being out there for a while. I don't, you're never done with learning as a coach about yourself and about other people and different techniques and all those things. And I was coaching a person in the summer last year, and I realized that it's okay as a coach to say that I am not the right fit for you. And I should have acknowledged that and said it, but I didn't. I kept trying to, work with this person and work with this person, and I was not only frustrating her, but I was frustrating myself as well during the process. So my learning, coming out of that is you're not doing yourself a service, nor are you doing them a service if you stay in something that's not beneficial to both parties, right? And it's okay as a coach to say that I'm not the right coach for you, and let's find you someone else that can work with you better.
Yeah, that's definitely tough.
And that's
That's
tough.
definitely tough. Yeah. I had an experience where a mom was hiring me to coach her young daughter, or not young, but she was young adult. And within the first few sessions, I like knew I was coaching the wrong person. I was definitely coaching the wrong person. And we had to have that conversation.
Hmm.
And I was really kind of grateful that it was a smooth transition because we moved from the daughter to the mom, and that tended to be a bit more helpful for the family. And so um, I think like when you first start, and I'm sure it happens with experience as well, it's like you just want to do it right. You just want to do it right. You want to see the good outcomes. You want
Hmm.
to see people thriving. And then when it's not going as well as you would hope, you're like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like our first thought always goes back to us when again, our goal is to hold people accountable and have them hold themselves accountable. But I think just as human beings, we always go back to maybe I'm not coaching them the right way. Like, what do I need to do different when that's not necessarily our weight to carry? But it's hard not to personalize that, especially, at least for me, especially in the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah, in this case, it was more of, I want to say my corporate side came back in again with, and it kind of lines into what Carl was saying. I could see where I thought this client should be or could
Mhm.
go, or things they could do differently, that they were not ready to do those things and didn't see themselves doing those things. And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
since I could see that vision and I couldn't get her to see that vision, that was me trying to lead her to some place where
Yeah.
she didn't really want to be. And it really was not a good fit. So because that was really the first in, 10 years that I had really experienced that. It was like I didn't know how to shift. Like it was like, and I had to go out for coaching myself after. I'm like, I need coaching here. Get somebody. I did. I went to my colleagues out and said, coach me on this. It's like, help
Yeah.
coach me through what am I doing? How am I showing up? And it was through that awareness with the coaching. It was like, I'm showing up on that results. I could see I'm bringing my results side into it. Ooh,
Hmm.
that's crazy how that just kind of came back in. It's
That's funny, Michelle. That was one of the things that happened during the program was, we talk about marketing your coaching and things like that. And I was having a hard time with that. I'm not a I'm not a big self-promoter, right? I've never pushed to get in the spotlight or it's probably, you know, kept me where I am right now, where I'm quite happy. But I just kept thinking about it. Well, what can I do? How do I promote myself? How do I do better at self promotion? I put things out on LinkedIn every night. I see people putting things on LinkedIn and all the time about their everything they're doing, and I'm just like, it just doesn't it doesn't ring right with me, right? With me, not with anybody else, whoever wants to do that. And so we did a, coaching session, and that was the topic that I brought up. And, my partner, you know, it was real cool. She just listened and she asked questions, and it really led me to the point where maybe I don't want to promote. Maybe I'm quite happy just being where I am organically, where I don't
Yeah.
have to force things. And I've never really had to force things. I've just, and in my career, I've been very fortunate where I haven't had to force too many things or be in a position where I was doing something I did not want to do. And, but I felt like, okay, well, other people are doing this. Why aren't I, or why do I feel like this, or what's keeping me from doing it? And just really made me realize that, it's something just because other people think you should do it, or you're trying to keep up with a standard, really, what is it that makes you happy, that, helps you find your joy? And that's really such an important piece of, my process as a professional, as a human being, that I just even learned in the last year in the program, right? So yeah, it was real cool.
Yeah, that whole thing. I like to share this story. May I share this?
Mhm.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to really totally date myself right here, but my dad, when ATMs first came out, they were not called ATMs; they're called versatile machines.
Hmm.
And so anyway, so I asked my
I
dad.
had a Versateller card. I had a
You
Bank
had
of
a
America
versatile, yes,
Versateller card.
exactly. That's what they called them.
The brown and orange ones.
So, I told my dad, I said, Dad, um, why don't you just go deposit your check in the machine right there? You don't have to wait in line inside the bank. You could just deposit it right there. It'll be in your account. It's not a big deal. He says, Girl, I'm not putting my money in that machine. I'm going inside the bank and I'm seeing the same lady that I see every Friday because I know that my money is going to go into my account, right? Well, two things. It was social for him on top of it too,
Yeah.
right? But fast forward, that's how I feel about marketing of myself. I
Hmm.
don't want to put myself in that ATM. How much of me do I want to put out there in there that's gonna spread out everywhere and you can't take it down once it's up there. So I don't do a lot of marketing in my coaching practice at all.
Me neither. Except for I do a shameless plug on this podcast every once in a while for my website.
Yes.
Gosh, what is it again, Carl? www.givingthegiftcoaching.com. That's about as far as I go. Uh,
Yeah.
Carl, Carl's again, Tiff, again. No, but
No,
I meet people. I don't post a lot. I don't have any social media. I am on LinkedIn. So I guess I can't say I have no social media. I am on LinkedIn, but I check it maybe once every 3 business months, if even that, or if like a notification comes up that I'm interested in. Um, and I meet people. Like that's really like the way that I market, is that when I'm out in the wild and I meet people and they ask me about like what I do, I love to share with them, and I pass out lots and lots of business cards when people ask for them.
Mhm.
And that's it. But I can't imagine, and to each their own, you know what I mean?
Yes,
To each their own.
absolutely.
I
Mhm.
love people that do post. There's like certain newsletters I subscribe to that I think are incredibly helpful and that give me insight, and I look forward to them every week. That's just not particularly my style, but everybody's allowed to do what they want and how they want, and that's okay,
Absolutely.
you know.
And some of the best people I've met in my life have been because of promotion that they put out there, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm not, you know, telling people that it's really for me. It's just I don't know. It's been weird just looking at my career progression. Most of it has happened as a result of organic connections with people and things, right? There's very rarely have I ever forced something.
Mhm.
Um, and so like I said, maybe I'd be living, next door to Bill Gates or something if I'd have forced things. But then I don't know, would I be me? Would I have been able to,
Yeah.
be my authentic self in the way that I really try to be now? And so, I don't look at regrets like that. I don't have a lot of regrets, right? So, um, that I regret, that my hair is a little lopsided in this filter, but we talked about that before the show started. But but just I'm just I really have lived life like that where opportunities have come about as a result of connections that I make with people and being out in the wild, as you said, Tiff, and just not trying to force things. For some people that's not their personality. They gotta get up and go, right? And so like I said, to each his own. And I'm glad some of you are out there getting that done because you've helped me along the way. So yeah, absolutely. So I was thinking, you know, um, just in your experience, in your coaching, mentoring experience, um, what are some shifts that you've seen? You spent 30 years at Apple, right? And so you're in leadership and mentorship and in the coaching piece, and then getting your certificate, right? Just the idea of coaching, like you mentioned at Apple, it was kind of seen as punitive, right? I came from the world of coaching. I coached, I played sports, in college, and then I coached 10 years after. And so my idea of coaching was fixing an issue, right?
Mhm.
And, discipline and structure. And then I realized in professional coaching that it's not the exact opposite, but it's definitely not that. And so just thinking about, where you've seen coaching evolve and the mindset and openness for people to accept coaching in your experience.
I think, I think COVID probably made a transition of coaching becoming, I think that's where coaching really kind of hit the, really kind of hit the platform. I mean, it really kind
Mhm.
of hit the milestone is because then all of a sudden, how do I do this? How do I work from home? How do how do I balance my family? I no longer have that transition time in between. Everything is just all merged together. What does that look like? And I think people really needed a connection of something at that point to kind of figure that out. And so I think COVID is what really helped get coaching more on the map than what it was on the map before. Now, what I see shifting is that, we've got the work from home stuff, and a lot of people really like it and still want it. But then there's the shift of coming back in the office. And what does that look like for them coming back in the office? And what does that mean? And what I think they lost in that work from home and the office is the ability to connect with people and build those relationships. It's harder to build relationships in a virtual type space. It's not that it can't be done. I believe it can be done. It just takes work and it's a different type of work to do it. And so, to have those conversations, I'm finding a lot of people don't know what a virtual coffee connection is or how can I go find someone in the organization to talk to them about something where before if I was at the coffee bar you might run into somebody and you could have a conversation, so there's a little more effort and I think that's the shift that's happening. um I think there's a big um kind of not divide, but a differences in how we lead between the generations, right? Between the boomers and the Gen Xers, kind of what does that look like and how do you bridge that, right? And, you know, um, it's interesting, to talk to them a lot around with the job hopping, but now they can't job hop now because the market's not allowing them to job hop, right? But if you have a conversation with them, there's not a loyalty to a company. So like no one will ever do 30 years at a company like I did 30 years. That just won't happen again, I don't think in the time of work. So we are in different times, right now in the market. And I think having a coach in that space with them is a great thing because a coach can help them see different perspectives. A coach can help them think about how can they bridge gaps. A coach can help them think about what is your next career and where do you want to go and how do you think you can get there and what does that look like. You know, a coach can help them understand that you own that yourself. It's not necessarily going to come from your boss, right? And your biggest currency that you have is a relationship currency, right? And so get them to just understand that concept of relationships are currencies, and those currencies help you to get to next steps. So those are the some of the things that I'm seeing out there, and it's interesting to have those conversations with them. Um, Someone shared with me that they were at a meeting, um, and the leader told some interns that were working at the company, you needed to have skin like a rhinoceros in order to survive this environment.
Mm.
And they were kind of offended by that analogy, but I really think what he was trying to say is that your skin needs to be thick and you need to be able to roll with things and roll with challenges and have resiliency and have creativity and have the drive and accountability and all of those, value type words that we talk about that I don't think um, a lot of people embrace that in the workplace right now because they're feeling the we got to go faster, we got to get stuff done, and they don't know what the go fast means for them. Does that make sense? How does that sound?
Yeah. When you it's interesting about we just had my son on here a few weeks ago and we were getting his Gen Z perspective and we
Hmm.
literally talked about the job hopping because he is a definite job hopper. Sometimes he's a job leaver, stay in one place for a bit till he finds another jobber, which is where he's at right now. But it is interesting because when I was going through the coaching program, we needed to have so many coaching hours. And so he was willing to be coached, right? And it was funny because I, would kind of share with him, and I think he was only around 20 at the time. Like, like when we're in these coaching sessions, Eric, I'm not your mom, I'm your coach. And so he got a kick out of calling me Miss Salcido. He'd be like, hello, Miss Salcido. It was like so fun for him to not call me mom. But we would have really great conversations. And so I remember like even after like time had passed, when he would have an issue, he would say, like, Mom, do you think we could do a quick coaching session? Like we'd be standing in the kitchen. And he's like, do you think we could get a quick coaching session? I'm like, yeah, what do you want to talk about? He's like, no, can we do it in Zoom? And so, because it was a different environment. And so he'd go to his room and I'd go to my office, which are like 5 feet apart. And we would get into the Zoom session. And so I think that was like helpful for him to change the dynamic. And so one day he says to me, Mom, I love you so much more as my coach than as my mom sometimes. And I'm
Mm,
like, what? And he's like, well, because as my mom, you're very judgmental. But as my coach, you actually help me process and learn things. And so that was like a really big lesson for me, like in these spaces that, you know, we can be very, very judgmental. And it's funny, like when you fit into a certain role, whether it's a mom, whether it's a boss, or I'm in my corporate mindset, or I'm in my instruction mindset, whatever it is, like we get into these patterns of behavior. And I think that's why coaching is so helpful, not just for the coach, but for the coachee.
mhm.
It gets to break those patterns in this really safe place where there is no judgment and you can just explore. And the value of those questions of getting you to think outside of your normal patterns and get out of the stories that you're telling yourself or the stories that other people are telling you. I'm always fascinated in those spaces because I think I'm a pretty smart person. I know where this is going to go. And it
Uh-oh.
Did we lose her?
She froze. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You're froze, Tiff.
She'll be back.
as well.
Huh? Uh, you there?
I'm here. I know you all froze. I thought, gosh, they're such good listeners. They're not even blinking. Lost.
All right. So,
I think you hit it right there, Tiff, because um, this workforce that's coming in right now, I feel they seek purpose, they seek well-being, they want to be included, they want to get real-time feedback, right? And if you think about, my generation of leadership, right? There wasn't real-time feedback. It's like, go do what I say, get it done, kind of thing, right? And
Hmm.
and the feedback was through annual reviews. And these guys are like, I don't want an annual review. Just tell me what I'm doing. Give me the feedback now. And
yeah,
so I think they're teaching us a lot of things, right? It's a lot of stuff. They're teaching us the stuff really that we as parents kind of told them growing up, right? If you think about it, the values and the things that they're bringing in. And I also think that they're kind of trying to shift the workforce back to um, kind of balance between work and life. I value them for that because I think, who's going to do 90 hours like I was doing 90 hours? Think about it, right? These kids, they don't want to work that kind of crazy schedule like we did or you guys do today. Uh-oh, we lost her.
go ahead. She'll come back.
Yeah. So, I think I think there's a lot of we need to stop and listen to what they're saying and honor and respect it and figure out how can you bring in those values and those things that they're saying into the workforce.
Yeah, 100%. And it's such a different conversation like Tiff was talking about, with her son and with my
Yeah.
daughter. And then I have a 23-year-old stepson that lives with us. And it's a different time. I mean, people don't change, when you're in your 20s, or in your teens and 20s, you have a lot of knowledge that, you think you know a lot more than you do. I know I did, you
Mm,
know, but just also at the same time, just being able to allow people to explore. It's
mhm.
completely different,
Yeah.
you know, being told,
Yeah.
what you're going to experience as opposed to, okay, you've experienced it, tell me how you feel, right? And that's such a hard part, integral part of that coaching process, right? And just, but it is different. Those connections are different. I think, some of the big things we've discussed, is have been how the generations have evolved
Hmm.
and how like you mentioned, we come from that generation to rub some dirt on it, walk it off, suck it up, right? Life's tough, right? You need to have rhino skin, right? And you got to be twice as good. I remember my dad always, you got to be twice as good as the next person, right? And those things like that are in our subconscious and stay there, right? And you know, pop up when we least expect it. And so now here we are as leaders, and we try to put that on people, right? Well, I didn't get what's all this coaching and this one-on-one? I didn't get one-on-ones from my boss. I was just working with a bank last week, and we're going through their performance management process. They're actually creating a performance management process, and I'm helping them do that. And one of the things they said was, one of the people said when I was coming up, it was, if you didn't talk to your boss, that's good news. No news is good news,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And now we know, that from the positive to negative ratio, the Lozada line, and all those other things, that, if you don't have positive interactions with your staff, they're always going to be on the defensive and scared and less productive. And so it's you know, a, such a challenge, right? To create like you said, connections are currency, right? We know 85% of jobs are through your connections, right? But then also 80% of people that get promoted, it's based off your skill, right? So people are, maybe they understand that communication is currency, but do they apply it? Because just because you're really, really good at what you do, you can be the best IT person in the world, but does that mean you can manage a team of 8 IT people with their own lives and their own issues, and their work habits that might be different than yours, and maybe people don't achieve at the same level you do, which is why you got promoted in the first place. How can you manage that, right? So that's that personal side. That's that connection. I've been really thinking about this, and I wonder. I have a theory. I don't like to say I believe this, right? But I'm wondering if the rise in access to coaching and to even therapy and other things like that, where people are really starting to create those connections and be in tune with themselves, is the lack of um, people actually having real life interactions and connections. Like you said, COVID did it, but also this generation, of social media, right? And when we were kids, we played till the streetlights came on, right? And you had your group of friends. You went to the park. If you got in a fight with one of your friends, you had to figure that out, because otherwise, I'm not going back home, or that's my group of friends. What else am I supposed to do? Nowadays, somebody gets in a fight with a group of friends, they can block them, they can leave the room, the game room they're in, and go somewhere else, right? There's so many easy accesses. Unfriend somebody is just as bad as telling somebody in their face that, I don't like you, you're not a nice person, right? And so I think that's just a structural change that I've seen just in the generations as we've evolved, is the lack of conflict resolution skills in the moment, right? And I think that that's something that maybe just people have kind of isolated themselves. We're hearing about this isolation. People are more isolated than any other time in history. Um, Young men have always isolated themselves, but it's gotten worse, and everybody across all the demographics are showing that we are more isolated than
Yeah.
ever. And I wonder if it's just because it's easy to, rather than pick the phone and give someone a call, or hang out after a tennis match, or whatever else it is, you can just go home and live your life and connect with people when you want. There's not
Yeah.
that forced need for connection.
Maybe. I don't know. I know that my my daughter was having a conversation with my grandson. He just started high school, and he's on this trajectory to play He wants to go to a certain college and then play baseball and then pro ball at some point. And they are having this conversation with him around, one bad Instagram post, one bad post on social media is going to could impact your whole plan. And I'm wondering how many parents are having those conversations now with their children. I want to say I was grateful that the internet was not there when my children were coming up. It was just breaking open at the time, because this whole space is a whole nother world of parenting and a whole nother world of, how do you coach, right? Because it's right. If you put that thing up on the internet, how do you think it's going to impact you in your work, in your home, in everything? I mean,
Whether it's fair or not.
whether it's fair or not. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, the CEO of the company, of a big company, just found that out,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
you're seeing people are finding that out. I mean, just the last how many years of people, just even emails and instant messages, right? That they thought were private or off the record that, are coming back to kind of expose, well, this is who you are off the record.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
So,
I'm at a Coldplay concert and with my
yes.
girlfriend.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the camera catches it. It's like, ooh, but
There's a yeah.
yeah. Anyway, but I
Tiffany there.
think
I'm here. My internet's being very, very special. Another new generational, technological, wonderful thing where you're at the mercy of your internet speeds, right? And today, apparently, mine are not that great.
Hmm.
did you see that AOL came out saying that they were finally canceling dial-up? And I was shocked that dial-up was still there. And they said they had like 200,000 users still using dial-up.
Hmm.
Wow.
I believe it.
Wow.
Oh, wow, okay.
Well, I'm in a very bad Wi-Fi area where I live, and I mean the speeds are great, but then it's dicey and it's weird. And
Mhm,
so I was actually thinking, I wonder if I could go back to like DSL cable where I could plug in.
mhm.
It's such a challenge. It's just talking about different worlds, different experiences,
But,
right?
Right.
I think we've been having a great conversation around how coaching can help, and I think coaching can help, kind of facilitate dialogues, right? So facilitate conversations, right? How can you have conversations to bridge the gaps of all the generations? Because each generation brings values of certain things that are good. And there are probably things that shouldn't go forward, but there are good things that should go forward. And how can you facilitate that dialogue across all to have healthy conversations? Um, I think coaching helps them to kind of look at how can they align their values, and the values across all, right? And coaching helps develop leaders and helps leaders to take a coach approach with how they lead, not lead the way I used to lead with the judgy, the why questions that
Mhm.
created a lot of problems, I feel. But we were in that was the environment we were in,
Mhm.
right? It was a lot of why and when and how come, right? And so I wish I would have had a lot of what and who type questions in that time. And I think coaching can help you think about how can you leverage your strengths and Carl's strengths and
Mhm.
Tiffany's strengths and everybody else's strengths to come together and come up with the best solution. And having a coach can help you do that. And I really wish, when I think back on my career, that I wish I would have had a coach and I would have really known what coaching was about more in my 30 years at Apple because I may have made different choices. I might have moved in different ways. I might have even gotten to different levels within the company. Who knows, right? But I think a coach helps you to see things in a different way. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing.
I I agree with you so much. And like one of the things that I'm standing 10 toes on is like breaking the cycle of trauma in leadership. I bring this up all of the time. Like we have to at some point realize that the way that we lead through being punitive and demeaning and not even intentionally. I don't think, Michelle, ever in your life that you would ever been like, I'd like to hurt their feelings, right? Or I need to put this person in their place. That's just not who you are. And many people are not that, but their actions sometimes create that dynamic. And so I really love the coach approach from a leadership perspective because you get to treat adults like adults. You get to treat people with respect for their significance and their expertise and their perspective and their all of that, which I think is important for psychological safety. But I think the coach approach from a professional sense, I think the most important thing that it does is it creates that spirit of curiosity. And we want people to be curious. Like we want our leaders to be curious. We want our employees to be curious. And when we get in too much of that, this is what I said, and this is what you need to do, that kind of chain of command, hierarchical, you do what your boss tells you, we lose a lot of that space for innovation.
Mhm.
And not even just innovation, but like in the moment ability to deal with what's in front of you, whether that be customer service or program development or design or whatever it is. If my boss has said A, B, C, D, and E are going to happen, and you need to handle it in that order, and then it deviates. I think that coach approach allows you to get in that space of, okay, A, B, and C happened, but D didn't happen. But let me go back a little bit and explore versus let's hide, let's cover it up, let's blame it on somebody else. My boss is such an idiot. They said A, B, C, and D, and I only got to C and it didn't work. And I'm not going to go ask, like that's the environment that I think many places have. And, how's that working for us? How is that
The drama
working for us?
triangle. Yeah, the drama
Yeah.
triangle, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is why I really love the coach approach and kind of where I kind of fell into coaching. I wanted to be a coach because as an instructor, I can go and introduce theories. I can help introduce and teach you how to different techniques.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you like how many audiences would say like this is great, but my boss would never let us do this. Or like this is cool and I might be able to use this at home, but there's no way in this environment that will ever work because of. And again, it goes back to the blaming and pointing fingers. And so when everyone takes on like this coach approach or this coaching mindset, at least being flexible, being open-minded, being curious, non-judgmental, I think it changes the entire dynamic of how we engage with each other and how the workplace engages. And it's so healthy, right? Because I'm limited. I, as a human, am limited to my own expertise. And Carl's limited to his own expertise, and you're limited in the moment to your own expertise. And so if we're only bound to what we know, we're not going to come up with great things. But if I can make space for, here's what I know. And I'm curious, Michelle, like what's your perspective or what do you see? And Carl, what do you see? We have these dialogues and we get to collaborate with all of that information and all of that experience to do something better. And that's why I'm very, very biased towards the coach approach because it puts everybody in a position to lead, no matter what your title is.
I
Yeah.
think, oh,
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was gonna say, I'm thinking back on my, my time at Apple, and I know I said we had a lot of what, how, and when, or not what, but why type questions. But those why type questions really didn't trickle in until like after the evolution of all that stuff that came out, right? But in the midst of all that evolution of stuff, we were in that innovative mindset with Steve, and there was not a no was not an answer. So you were constantly looking for creative and ways to get stuff done. So it fostered the come together of the groups in, not a coach approach, but just in a team approach where people were brainstorming different ideas because we didn't have a choice, right? Because
Mhm.
that was the leadership hierarchy at the top. Fast forward now, 40 years later, because I've been out of there 10, they are probably at a point right now where a coach approach would benefit them more so because there isn't the true innovation happening, right? I don't feel a lot of innovative things are not coming out. It's a lot of just enhancement of things that are there. And maybe some services are changing. But how do you do that, right? And you've got a different group of people coming into the company, right? So you've got, the Gen Xers coming in, Gen Zers, millennials, all of them in the company where, all of us baby boomers are exiting out, right? So you don't have that same kind of structure, loyalty, that type of thing. So there, I think that's the shift over there in the environment itself. Plus AI coming in, no one knows what it's going to do in these environments. But you're right. I think not placing judgment and taking a coach approach is really the way we need to move the workforce towards. And I don't know how we get them there without
Yeah.
coach.
This concludes part 1 of our episode. Stay tuned for part 2, coming Tuesday to all major podcast platforms.